I was scrolling through Instagram when I saw my sister posing in front of the Eiffel Tower, champagne in one hand, our mother tagging it, family trip of a lifetime. I stared at the photo, my thumb frozen mid-scroll. Because it was my grandma's birthday. And no one had mentioned her, no post, no text, no seat on that luxury flight. I called her. No answer. I called again. Still nothing. So I drove. 6 hours through the night, heart pounding louder with every mile. When I arrived, her house was silent. She sat by the window, a tiny figure wrapped in a faded cardigan, a cake beside her untouched. She turned to me slowly and whispered, "Is today special?" And in that moment, something in me broke. Because what I uncovered next was worse than silence. It was betrayal. I didn't grow up in a cruel home, just one where people forgot things that didn't shine. In my family, appearance was everything. Mom always said, "We're Carters. We look good, we move up, we never look back." That mantra was stitched into our dinner napkins, our holiday cards, even the captions beneath our filtered smiles online. And in those curated frames, my grandma rarely appeared. She wasn't glamorous. She wore orthopedic shoes and mismatched sweaters. She smelled of lavender and Vicks. But to me, she was the only real thing in our lives. Growing up, while my parents juggled clients and curated content, I spent afternoons in her garden, chasing butterflies and learning how to listen. Not just with ears, but with presence. Grandma never interrupted, never judged. She made silence feel full. She'd say, "Eliana, people forget words, but they remember how you make them feel. Make people feel seen." She made me feel seen. And so, I remembered. I remembered her hands shaping cookie dough with soft determination, her cracked voice humming 60s love songs while pruning rose bushes. I remembered the time I fell off my bike and scraped my knee, how she didn't panic or scold, just brought out a cold cloth and whispered, "Even petals bleed sometimes." Meanwhile, my mom ran a beauty brand, and my dad invested in resorts. They were always busy. "Not now," was their most used phrase. And Bellamy, older sister, she mastered the art of being adored. Cheer captain, skincare influencer, featured in digital campaigns with pastel fonts and fake freckles. She never had to ask for attention. It came to her like bees to sugar. I was always too much, or too quiet, or too emotional. I talked about things that didn't photograph well: loneliness, grief, memories that didn't sparkle. So I learned to tuck those parts of me away. But Grandma never asked me to. She remembered my birthday every year, even when no one else did. She mailed handwritten cards, always adding something personal like, "Keep writing, you have your grandfather's hands." I didn't have the heart to tell her no one at home ever talked about Grandpa. He passed away when I was 8, and from that moment, it was like his memory was banned. Grandma, too, slowly became part of the background, until she wasn't even part of the room. The last Christmas we all spent together, she gave Bella a handmade quilt and got a tight smile in return. Mom whispered later that evening, "It's sweet, but kind of outdated, isn't it?" But I saw the way Grandma folded her hands in her lap, nodding as if she agreed. That was the night I realized she was beginning to disappear, not because her memory was fading, but because everyone had stopped looking at her. So when I saw that Instagram post from Paris, I didn't just see a family trip. I saw the final unraveling of a thread that had been weakening for years. And I knew if I didn't hold on to it now, there'd be nothing left. Not of her. Not of us. I didn't plan to open Instagram that morning. I was just grabbing my phone to check my email. But muscle memory betrayed me. One swipe, one tap, and there it was. Paris. The Eiffel Tower bathed in golden morning light. My sister Bella posing in a silk dress, hand on hip, captioned, "Birthday week in Paris with the fam, Carter legacy, grateful." Below it, a carousel of polished images: mom in designer heels at a rooftop brunch, dad sipping wine at a 5-star hotel, Bella holding 2 croissants like they were crowns. The likes climbed into the thousands. The comments were full of envy and admiration. Your family is perfect. So inspiring. Dream life. Adopt me plus. I scrolled back to the top, blinking. Birthday week. But not Bella's birthday. It was Grandma's. Today, I checked the date again just to be sure. February 19th. The date I'd circled in my calendar, set reminders for, planned to call later in the afternoon after class. She turned 79 today. And they were in Paris. No mention, no post, not even a story of her blowing out candles from afar. Just Eiffel Tower angles and Bella's new skincare line in soft focus filters. My hands trembled. I texted Mom. Did you do something for Grandma today? Seen? No reply. I called. Straight to voicemail. I called again. This time, Dad picked up, his voice clipped. Eliana? We're a little busy right now. I know, I said, trying to keep calm. It's Grandma's birthday. Is she with you guys? Silence. Then. We sent her something last week. Bella ordered flowers, and I wired her some money. Money. Of course. They sent her money. I felt like screaming, but all I said was, she's alone, isn't she? Dad sighed. Eliana, your grandma values her independence. She probably doesn't even remember. That's when something shifted. A quiet fury, hot and sharp. Because even if her memory was slipping, that didn't make her disposable. That didn't give them the right to abandon her on her birthday while sipping champagne in another country. I ended the call. Then I packed a weekend bag, filled my tank, and started the 6-hour drive to her house. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't post a story. I didn't ask for applause. I just drove. The highway stretched out like a question I wasn't ready to answer. Was she okay? Did she think they forgot? Had she waited all morning? As dusk fell and her neighborhood came into view, a strange sense of dread tightened in my chest. Her front porch light was on, the curtains pulled halfway. And there through the window I saw her. A single slice of cake sat untouched on the table. She was sitting beside it, facing the window. Not eating. Not watching TV. Just staring. And as I walked toward the house, one thought kept echoing in my head. How do you forgive people who forget the one who raised them? The porch creaked beneath my feet as I stepped up. The evening light spilled soft shadows across the wooden panels, and for a second, I just stood there, hand hovering over the doorknob, heart pounding like I was about to break bad news to someone who didn't even know she needed it. The door was unlocked. I pushed it open gently. Grandma? I called out, careful not to startle her. She didn't respond. She was still sitting by the window, her hands folded neatly in her lap. The cake, small, store-bought, barely frosted, sat on a chipped plate beside her, a single candle pushed in the middle but never lit. Grandma, I said again, stepping closer, forcing a smile. It's me, Eliana. This time, she turned. Her eyes, still the same soft hazel I'd known my whole life, flickered with recognition. Eliana, she whispered. Oh, you came. I kneeled beside her and gently took her hand. It was cold, her fingers thinner than I remembered. I came for your birthday, I said, trying to inject some cheer into my voice. We were supposed to have cake, remember? She looked at the cake, then back at me. Is today special? She asked softly. I felt my throat close. It's your birthday, Grandma, I said, forcing a smile that nearly cracked. You're 79 today. She blinked slowly. Oh, she said after a long pause. Is that so? Then she smiled. A weak, quiet smile that made my heart break more than if she'd cried. I must have made that cake for someone then, she said, almost to herself. My chest tightened. You made it for yourself, I whispered, because no one else did. She nodded faintly, still not fully connecting the pieces. I helped her to the kitchen table, set 2 plates, lit the candle, even though she didn't remember why. We sat in silence, cutting into the cake. The frosting was lopsided. The inside was a little dry, but it was perfect. Because she had made it. Alone. She looked up once, midway through chewing, and asked, "Did Bella call?" I shook my head. "Oh," she said. No surprise. No anger. Just that same faint nod, the kind you give when you've learned to expect very little. I wanted to scream. To shake the phone at my sister's face. To post a picture of this moment, a frail woman in a worn-out sweater, sitting in a quiet kitchen with one flickering candle and no audience. But I didn't. I just held Grandma's hand. Later that night, as I tucked her into bed, she looked up and asked, "Are you staying long?" "As long as you want," I told her. She nodded again and closed her eyes. And as I sat beside her in the dark, one thing became clear. This wasn't just about a forgotten birthday. It was about something deeper, a quiet erasure of a woman who once held the family together. A woman now treated like clutter in the attic of their lives. And I was the only one who noticed. The next morning, Grandma was humming softly to herself as she watered the same spot in her garden over and over. It was February. The soil was cold and dry, the plants long gone for winter. But she kept pouring. "Eliana, the lavender's looking thin this year," she murmured, gaze unfocused. I didn't correct her. There hadn't been lavender in that corner since fall. Instead, I brought her inside and made tea mint, her favorite. She held the cup in both hands like it was the only warm thing left in the world. I sat across from her, watching the steam swirl up from her mug, and realized I was waiting for a sign. A sign that she was okay, that this was just a blip, that her memory would return any moment and we'd laugh about yesterday. But the sign never came. Instead, I saw the small things. The toothbrush left in the freezer. The oven dial turned to bake with nothing inside. A pile of unopened mail under the fruit bowl, envelopes yellowing at the edges. And then, I saw it. Tucked between two grocery store flyers was a crisp white envelope. Thick, sealed, with a law firm's logo on the top. Lansbury, Griggs, Powell, Estate Planning and Property Transfer Division. My breath caught. I opened it carefully. Inside was a typed letter, addressed to Mrs. Martha Carter, confirming receipt of her signed agreement to proceed with the voluntary transfer of residential property located at 12 Chestnut Lane. Her house. This house. Transfer? To who? I checked the second page. It wasn't there. The third page was a duplicate. No name, no recipient, just that it had been signed. Panic started to crawl under my skin. I turned to Grandma, who was quietly folding a dish towel with shaky hands. "Grandma," I asked gently, "do you remember signing anything for a law office?" She squinted. "Maybe," she said slowly. "Someone came by. A man in a suit. He said something about paperwork to keep things simple. I didn't want to make a fuss." "Was I here?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, it was a Tuesday, I think." I stared at her. She didn't even know what day it was today. I stood, walked into the study, and opened the drawer she always kept her bills in. Everything was scattered bank statements, checkbooks, birthday cards from years ago. And there it was, a manila folder. Inside a copy of a deed transfer. With a signature. Her signature. Shaky, slanted. The same loops I'd seen on my birthday cards, but trembling now, like it wasn't sure of itself. My name wasn't anywhere on it. But Bella's was. Transferee, Isabella Carter. My vision blurred for a second. I blinked hard. My sister. My sister was trying to take Grandma's house. It was no longer about a forgotten birthday. This was something else. Something deliberate, quiet, and cruel. And if I didn't act soon, it wouldn't just be Grandma's name they erased. It would be her entire life. I stared at Bella's name on the transfer form until the letters stopped meaning anything. Isabella Carter, transferee. There was no mistake. This wasn't a clerical error or a misunderstanding. It was intentional. I turned the page. The notary signature was dated exactly 12 days ago, a Tuesday, just like Grandma had said. The ink barely dried. Attached was a short letter from the same law firm confirming that, as per verbal instructions from both parties, the transfer was now in motion. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw something. Instead, I walked back into the kitchen, holding the papers like they were contaminated. "Grandma," I asked, keeping my voice calm, "did Bella tell you anything about taking over the house?" She looked up from her tea, confused. "Taking over?" she echoed. "No. She said something about helping with bills, but she's such a busy girl now, always flying somewhere." Busy girl. Influencer. Brand builder. Always chasing the next thing to wear, to show, to turn into a campaign. And now, Grandma's home? I picked up my phone and dialed Bella. Voicemail. I left a message. "Bella, I need to talk to you. It's about Grandma's house. Call me." 10 minutes later, she texted back. "Hey babe, in a shoot RN, what's going on?" I replied instantly. "You filed for a deed transfer in your name. You got Grandma to sign. Don't act like you don't know." Scene. No response. Then. I didn't force her. She agreed. She said she didn't want the hassle of owning alone anymore. "I'm taking care of things." I almost laughed out loud. Taking care? Bella hadn't visited Grandma in over 5 months. She once sent a cleaning crew as a surprise gift, and then posted the whole thing to TikTok like a charity drive. I typed, "She has memory issues, Bella. She doesn't understand what she signed. You exploited that." The 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. I wanted to call my parents, but I already knew what they'd say. "Bella's helping. It's still in the family. You're overreacting." But I wasn't. I could feel it in my bones, that same heat I'd felt when I saw the Paris photos. This wasn't just betrayal. It was theft disguised as convenience. I sat at the table, the copy of the deed spread out before me. Grandma shuffled into the room, her slippers soft on the tile. "Eliana," she said gently. "Did I do something wrong?" I looked up. "No," I said. "You didn't. Someone else did." She nodded slowly, not understanding, and touched my hair like she used to when I was little. That broke me. Right then, I made a silent vow. This house would not be taken. Not while she was still breathing. Not while I had anything to say about it. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay on the old couch in Grandma's living room, surrounded by silence and the faint smell of chamomile and wood polish. Every creak of the house felt like it was asking me the same question. Are you going to let them get away with this? No. I wasn't. By morning, I had a plan. The first thing I did was call Dr. Lively, Grandma's longtime physician. He'd seen her just last month for a checkup. I explained the situation in a rush of panicked breath, and he grew quiet on the other end. "Eliana," he said carefully, "I can't tell you everything without consent, but I can tell you this. She's showing signs of moderate cognitive decline. It's documented. Can you put that in writing?" I asked. "I'll get you a copy of her chart summary," he said. "And Eliana, good on you for stepping in." Next, I visited Mrs. Avery, the neighbor across the street. She and Grandma had shared garden clippings and gossip for 2 decades. When I asked if she remembered anyone visiting recently, she frowned. "2 young people," she said. "One was your sister, I think, dressed like she walked out of a magazine. The other some man in a suit. They were only there 20 minutes. Your grandma seemed confused." That was all I needed. That afternoon, I drafted a legal notice using a template I found through the university's online clinic. I filled in every blank: coercion, mental incapacity, undue influence, intent to void deed transfer. Then I attached the supporting documents. The deed with the shaky signature, the physician's note, my own written statement, Mrs. Avery's account. I sent it to the law firm listed on the transfer, CCing Bella and both of my parents, and waited. The first call came from Mom. "Eliana," she said, her voice tight with disbelief. What are you doing? I'm protecting Grandma. She signed the papers. Bella's helping? She has dementia, Mom. She didn't know what she was signing. Silence. Then, this isn't just about Grandma, is it? You've always been jealous of Bella. That stopped me cold. Jealous? I looked around the room at the fading wallpaper, the shelf of old photographs, the empty teacup still on the table from this morning. I wasn't jealous. I was furious. I'm not jealous, I said, voice shaking. I'm just the only one who still sees her as a person. Mom exhaled sharply, then hung up. Next was Dad. You're blowing this way out of proportion, Eliana. The transfer was legal, she signed. Under confusion. That makes it voidable. He scoffed. You're not a lawyer. Not yet, I replied. But I've read enough to know she's protected by elder law, and I'll take this to court if I have to. You'd sue your own sister? I'd sue anyone who treats Grandma like a stepping stone. Then came Bella. Finally. She FaceTimed me. Her eyes were red. Her makeup was flawless. Eliana, I didn't mean to hurt her, she said softly. I needed the house. The aesthetic is perfect. I was going to renovate it and feature it in my new brand. You needed the aesthetic? I repeated, stunned. She needed her dignity. I thought she wouldn't even notice. She didn't, I snapped. That's the point. Bella looked away. It's already in motion. Then stop it. She shook her head. If this goes public, do you know what it'll do to my brand? I laughed bitterly. Your brand should collapse. She hung up. That night, I emailed the university's legal aid team and scheduled an in-person consult. I didn't know how far this would go, but I knew one thing. I was all in. And if that meant going to court, facing my own blood across a courtroom aisle, then so be it. I wasn't afraid of what I'd lose anymore. I was afraid of what Grandma would lose if I didn't fight. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning. I ironed my one decent blazer the night before and packed a slim folder with everything I had. Dr. Lively's written statement, the deed copy, Mrs. Avery's affidavit, a letter of intent. I wasn't a lawyer, but I was my grandmother's last line of defense. We arrived early. Grandma wore a soft cream cardigan and a strand of fake pearls she used to save for church. Her hair was brushed, her hands trembling slightly as she gripped mine. Eliana, she whispered, why are we going somewhere fancy? I didn't answer. Because the truth was too heavy for her to carry. Inside the courtroom, everything smelled of polish and silence. The clerk called our names. I glanced across the aisle and saw them Mom, Dad, and Bella. Bella wouldn't meet my eyes. They brought a lawyer, a man in a blue-gray suit with expensive glasses and a voice like velvet dipped in oil. He spoke first. Your Honor, the transfer of property from Mrs. Martha Carter to Ms. Isabella Carter was legal, voluntary, and notarized. My clients acted in the best interest of the family, particularly given Ms. Carter's age and need for financial security. I stood, heart racing. Your Honor, I began, my grandmother was not mentally competent to make such a decision. She suffers from cognitive decline. I have medical documentation and testimony from a neighbor who witnessed confusion on the day of signing. The judge, a woman in her early 60s with silver hair and a direct gaze, nodded slowly. Ms. Carter Elianato, you have evidence? I handed the file over. She flipped through it, page by page, then turned to Grandma. Mrs. Carter? The judge asked gently. Do you remember signing a deed to transfer your home to your granddaughter, Isabella? Grandma blinked. She looked around, then at me. I don't remember, she said softly. Bella gave me papers, but I thought they were bank stuff. I didn't know it was the house. Did anyone explain it to you? She shook her head. Did you feel pressured? A pause. Then, they said it was easier for everyone. I didn't want to be a burden. My chest twisted. Bella sank slightly in her seat. The judge turned to the opposing counsel. You claimed this was done with full understanding? Yes, Your Honor, the lawyer said. There was no medical evidence submitted to us before the signing. Because you never asked, I said. And because no one cared to check. The judge raised her hand, then lowered her gaze to the file again. After what felt like forever, she spoke. This court finds sufficient grounds to question the validity of the property transfer. Given the medical evidence of cognitive decline, the testimony provided, and the lack of informed consent, I declare the deed transfer null and void. She looked at me. And, until further review, I am granting Eliana Carter temporary guardianship of Mrs. Martha Carter. I heard my breath catch. Grandma squeezed my hand, not fully understanding, but smiling at my expression. Across the room, Bella looked stunned. Mom buried her face in her hands. Dad stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. But none of them said a word. Because the truth had spoken for itself. And this time, it had been loud enough. We returned home just before sunset. The front porch creaked the same way it always had, the paint still peeling near the mailbox. But that evening, it felt like something had shifted. Not in the wood, not in the air, in me. This was no longer just Grandma's house. It was ours. I helped her out of the car and into the living room. She settled into her favorite armchair by the window, the one with the faded floral fabric and the cushion that leaned slightly to the left. Her eyes wandered toward the garden. The lavender's coming back, she whispered. There was no lavender yet. But I didn't correct her. Instead, I knelt beside her and said, "We'll plant some together this spring." She smiled, a full smile this time, one I hadn't seen in months. That night, I unpacked my bag and moved into the guest room, the same one I used to sleep in as a child during summer breaks. I brought over my books, my laptop, and a framed photo of Grandma and Grandpa that had always sat on my dorm shelf. I emailed my advisor to officially defer the semester. He replied within the hour. Take all the time you need. You've already passed the kind of test most people never face. In the days that followed, we settled into a quiet rhythm. Morning tea at 8 a.m. Watering imaginary flowers at 9. Stories at noon. Afternoon naps with the sun streaming through the lace curtains. Sometimes, she called me Helen, her late sister. Other times, Ruth, her childhood friend. Once, she looked straight at me and whispered, "James, you always kept your promises." That was Grandpa's name. I didn't correct her. I just took her hand and said, "I'm here." Because I was. Fully. Finally. The family never came back. No calls, no visits, just silence, carefully curated across their online lives. Bella's Instagram remained filled with pastel kitchens and faux Parisian cafes. Mom's page stayed polished. Dad's LinkedIn updated with a new partnership. But they never once asked about Grandma. And I no longer expected them to. One afternoon, as we sat watching the wind roll through the empty flower beds, Grandma reached over and took my hand. "Eliana," she said, her voice clear for once, "do you know what I see when I look at you?" I shook my head. "A home," she whispered. "I see home." Tears blurred my vision. Because in that moment, I realized I didn't need their approval. Didn't need their version of success or perfection. I had her. And she had me. And together, we had this quiet garden, this creaky porch, and this imperfect, beautiful life. Sometimes the only person who still remembers you is the one you must never forget. And I never will.